All right, guys, what was Pearl Harbor? Chapter 2, a dangerous and risky. As tensions rose between Japan and the United States, some American leaders feared a Japanese attack somewhere in the Pacific, probably the Philippines. Almost no one thought the Japanese would dare to attack Pearl Harbor. Three things seemed to make Pearl Harbor attack-proof. One, the mighty Pacific Fleet, right here, remember all the ships, was based there. Surely an attack would be crushed right away. Surely any attack would be crushed right away. 2 torpedoes could not be used there. Torpedoes were cigar-shaped missiles dropped from airplanes. They fired into the hulls of ships below the waterline. The waters of Pearl Harbor, however, were very shallow. They were not deep, you guys. Torpedoes would get stuck in the mud and fail to explode. Pearl Harbor was 4,000 miles away from Japan. A surprise attack seemed impossible. Planes or ships would certainly be spotted long before they could strike. The Japanese understood these dangers. Most of their military leaders discarded the idea of attacking Pearl Harbor. All except one. He was the Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, an important officer of the Imperial Army. Admiral Yamamoto did not believe that Japan could win a long war against the United States. He had lived in America for several years and had seen the power of its economy and military up close. Nonetheless, Yamamoto did think that Japan could win an all-important first strike against the United States, if it came as a surprise. At first strike at Pearl Harbor could deal a crushing blow to the U.S. fleet. America would not be able to strike back for many months. Meantime, Japan would be free to take over the South Pacific. That would break the enemy's will to fight, Yamamoto said. Yamamoto's idea was dangerous and risky. Nonetheless, the military gave him the go-ahead to put together a plan. Yamamoto gathered a team of engineers and military leaders. They came up with a very different kind of attack plan. Something that had never been done before. Dun, dun, dun. Up until then, great naval battles were fought on the open sea. Huge battleships pounded each other with warheads shot from cannons just underneath the water. But in the Yamamoto's plan, the attack would come from the air. See the airplanes? Planes would take off from a huge aircraft carriers. It's a big ship where airplanes can fly and land. An aircraft carrier is basically a floating airport. It can transport hundreds of airplanes across the seas. The long, flat upper deck on a carrier provides a runway for takeoffs and landings. Yamamoto's master plan called for several carriers to bring hundreds of planes within flying distance of Pearl Harbor. The strike force would include bombers and fighter planes, and the key weapon would be a torpedo that worked in shallow water. Yamamoto's team came up with the smart idea of putting wooden fins on torpedoes. The fins would make the torpedoes turn towards the target almost as soon as it hit the water. With the torpedoes, problem solved. The Japanese could now rip gashes into the hulls of battleships and destroy them. So the hulls are underneath the water. Here he is. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, born in 1884 and died in 1943. 57-year-old Admiral Yamamoto was the mastermind behind the Pearl Harbor attack. Yamamoto lived for a while in the United States. first as a student at Harvard University and later as a Japanese official in Washington, D.C. During those years, he developed a deep respect for America. When World War II broke out, he had concerns about Japan siding with Germany. He thought it would lead to a war with the United States, a war that Japan could not win. Yamamoto believed air power was the way to win wars now. He even foresaw the sea battles could be won by firing ships from the air. Before battles at sea. Oh, I lost my place. Meant big ships fighting against other big ships. Yamamoto oversaw the building of a massive air fleet in Japan. By 1941, the Japanese had nearly 5,000 warplanes. His planning for Pearl Harbor attack proved to be brilliant. Yamamoto was tracked and killed by the U.S. Army troops in 1943 for his part in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Oh. So sometimes being a mastermind, not so good. Because if you don't use your brains for good, bad things can happen. Okay, so let's recap. Dangerous and risky plan. The Japanese were mad. The Americans were confused. Is it really going to happen? Are they going to attack us? They're not going to attack Pearl Harbor, right? Did they think that they could attack Pearl Harbor? No, because it was so shallow. The water was so shallow. And Japan was 4,000 miles away. And torpedoes, they figured it out. They made the torpedo come down, and they put what on the torpedoes? Fins, so that it went directly into the ship, into the hull, into the bottom. And it was one person who thought outside the box to do an airstrike. It had to be a surprise because they could only hit the U.S. one time, right? And that was Admiral Yamamoto. And did he live very long after he did the attack? Yes or no? No, because who killed him? The Americans. Good job. Bye, guys.